Hi, welcome to the Whosoever Group podcast. My name's Sam, aka the Happy Crow, and then today I have my first guest with me. How you doing?
Pretty good. Good to be here.
So this is my friend Dennis, and he's worked with me for a few years at my job that I do outside of podcasting and writing. So when we started working together, we had a very interesting relationship. Let's say that.
Yeah, let's just say that.
We didn't get along, but it's okay, obviously. So when we started, it was rough, and as that happened, we eventually came to this great place. I would say now, right?
I would say so.
And in that time frame, a lot has happened. So we're not going to get crazy much into a lot of things. But the reason I brought him here today is because this man has a crazy story from his life, things that he's been through, and where God has taken him. And this is something we need to talk about because how does the word spread? Through testimony. So unless people hear that testimony, you're not going to be able to learn nothing. So I want to learn. So Dennis, let's talk a little bit about, like, I know your life's been a little nuts. So
Yeah, a little bit.
so let's talk about some of it. So where do you want to start?
Well, I was born on a warm summer day in November of '84.
The breeze is blowing
Yeah.
ever so slightly, I
Warm
was
summer
told.
day in November. Yeah, like you said, it's been a long, real crazy ride. A lot of things are a little outrageous to talk to protect people I love. I won't get too involved in things. But going back to my younger days, some of the earliest memories I have are very violent in my household. My parents fought a lot, got out of hand sometimes. And unfortunately, some of those things are burned into my mind. Even this long after, like you think about it, it doesn't go away. Like you don't forget the first things that you experienced or that you were old enough to experience. My parents separated and divorced when I was about 4. I lived with my dad. It was just me and him. He worked crazy hours, did everything he could to take care of me. It was just me and him for the most part, until he met my stepmother, who passed a year ago. But she stepped in as the role of my mother, which not many women would be able to do with a child that's not theirs.
That's awesome, though.
Yeah, she real good woman. I never felt like I belonged. For the most part, I never felt like I was hers because she came with my older brother, and obviously he was hers and I was not. But through the years, we got super close. Always there for me, teacher conferences and all my sports and stuff like that. Very supportive in my life. But I would say probably around 13 to 14 years old is when I started kind of slipping into crappier ways of life. Smoking weed with kids from school or whoever was around doing it.
So you were one of the cool kids.
Yeah, or so I thought. Or so I wanted people to think. Around 15 and 16, it got to, harder things like cocaine, drinking a
16.
lot. Yeah. Um,
Man,
was-
it's for me. I grew up a little sheltered with stuff, so
yeah.
I'm just trying to think, like, how in the world? Like, I understand the weed because that's like everywhere.
Yeah.
How in the world did you get a hold of that?
Well, we won't go too far into that either.
I understand.
I don't want to implicate anyone.
I think we're past statute of limitations
Yeah.
this one, but I understand.
But I lived with my dad in Emmaus, and on the weekends I'd go to my mom's in Fountain Hill or right around 5 Points in Bethlehem, which, if you're familiar, isn't really the greatest place to be. Very easy to get your hands on things. And back then, I mean, like late 90s, early 2000s, you could still go around by yourself. Your parents let you do things.
Back before the world, took
Yeah.
took a hard turn downward.
Boy, did it. But lot of a lot of drinking. Drinking was always my biggest issue. Like, drinking led to so many other things. Made horrible decisions when I was drinking, as most of us do. But it turned into when I couldn't get Coke, it was buying Adderall and Ritalin from kids at school, being up for days at a time. Actually, the only reason I graduated is because of all the pills I was able to get to keep me awake and keep me doing my schoolwork. But a lot of people think that when you go the wrong way in life that your childhood had something to do with it, and really it didn't. Like my dad and my stepmom were always there. I had everything I wanted. My mom and my stepfather, who also passed away. Um, I never wanted for anything. I had everything I needed. I worked really hard through high school. Um,
Curiosity, you don't feel like anything from like when you were real young affected, like you said, like from the up to four with
I
all
think
the sings things and
I
whatnot.
think my biggest problem, I was always very insecure. Like I never felt like I was the cool kid. I tried way too hard. I looked for attention from girls. That was all that mattered. Girls, drugs, alcohol. Always in fights because I thought that made me the cool guy, the tough guy. When everything really started getting out of hand, I left home when I was 17, enlisted in the Air Force, and I got out of boot camp. I got stationed in Glendale, Arizona, and I had just married the girl I was with in high school, which within months of being there, I started cheating. I started partying with other guys, which turned into partying with other women. Ruined that marriage like right off the bat. Uh, I met one girl in particular who was a recovering meth addict, and one night we were drinking quite a bit, and I brought it up, asked what it was like, and her answer was, "It's better than anything you've ever experienced." So naturally, in my drunken state, I convinced her to call someone she knew that could get something for us. And immediately it was like really, I don't know, like something you'd see in like a crazy movie, like a Breaking Bad situation where we show up at this house and she said we had to go around to the back. We go around to the back and there's this big piece of like a full sheet of plywood against the house. And I'm kind of sketched out at this point. Like I don't really know what's happening. And we pulled the wood away and knocked on a window. It was
Wait. There's like
yeah.
there's no handle or nothing. You're just
No,
pulling just a giant
no.
sheet of plywood.
I don't know if you've ever experienced the way meth users are, but you don't want anyone to see inside.
Oh, jeez.
You don't want to see outside unless it's like through the blinds kind of thing. But we climbed through the window to make sure that these people's mother couldn't hear us coming in, and
I'm assuming the mother had no idea, or was
I
this
I
denial?
think she knew. Like we all thought we were so slick, but there was no slick. Plus, I was annihilated drunk, so I was making a lot of noise.
Oh, jeez.
But my first experience that took me down a really nasty road was the guy had like a homemade water bong, and I don't want to get too graphic. I don't want anybody to get uncomfortable, but he told me that the first hit would crystallize my lungs if I breathed it in, that I had to blow it out. So I took that literally and put my mouth on it and blew water through the whole thing and destroyed a good amount of meth. I don't know how much money it was, but within seconds I had a gun to the back of my ear, which was one of the scariest things that ever happened to me. And for most people, that probably would have scared them straight. But we then proceeded, after I pulled my wallet out, we did get high. And
So they were still cool afterward. You talked your way out of it?
I couldn't tell you exactly how it happened. I know I was no longer drunk when the gun hit the side of my head.
Sober you up quick.
Yeah, pretty quick. But in the beginning, I was like, well, this isn't really anything. I fell asleep in the car on the way home. And when I woke up, it was uncomfortable and amazing and horrible all at the same time. And I was up for like 3, 4 days after that. And nothing I did helped me recoup. Like nothing made me feel better. So naturally, I went back out, and that turned into a year, give or take, of just constantly being high. Um, and again, I was in the military when it was
So
happening.
what age was this around?
I was 19, I believe. Um, and the girl I was hanging out with, always we ended up in like really, really odd situations. And the people that she hung out with were very odd people, um, very violent people. Uh, that was not the last time someone put a gun to my head or a situation similar. Um, but I started hanging out with her friends and stuff, and I was the guy who always had money being in the military, so I was always the guy that was putting money front. Um, some people I was hanging out with for a while, we found a way to, and again, not trying to implicate anyone, but print our own money.
Uh,
Um,
were you still with your ex-wife at the time?
yeah. I wouldn't say we were really together anymore. There was no saving it at that point. Like I had done too much damage. Guys that I worked with were starting to catch on to what I was doing and were telling her, and um, it got just to the point where she couldn't stay there anymore. Like she had to get out. She moved out of our house on base and in with some friends, and I didn't really see her a whole lot after that. That was more or less the end of anything. But the girl who I started hanging out with, started getting high with, her mom like took to me immediately, like always talking about her son who was killed in a bad drug deal. Her other son was in prison for crystal meth. Like Arizona, where I was at, like Avondale area, is they call it the Valley of the Spun instead of the Valley of the Sun because there's just meth everywhere. It's intense. So once I started hanging out with some of those people and doing what we were doing, we were printing money so we could go to Walmart and buy more ink with money we had made ourselves to print more money to go to dealers. And dealers don't take too kindly to figuring out what's going on. Word of mouth travels fast with users, we'll say. Um, but I was at a dealer's hotel room one night, and I left my phone behind when we went to leave. I knocked on the door and told him I lost it. Well, apparently the girl I was with told him that I accused his girlfriend of it, and once again I had a gun to my head. Um, Again, it should have been enough. Like that should have scared me out of the lifestyle, but I kept on going.
What do you feel like drove you like to?
It I didn't want to be in the military in the first place. I mean, the only reason I ever wanted to was my dad is a Vietnam vet. Um, I wanted to be a Marine, and at 17 years old, the only way to get into the military is for both your parents to sign a waiver. Um, Otherwise, I would have had to wait till I was 18. So he didn't want to send me away because it was right after 9/11. He wanted me to do something that maybe wasn't as dangerous. First tried to talk me into the Army, which didn't work out. I bombed the ASVAB test for them on purpose and just disrespected the hell out of this recruiter, which shouldn't have been that way. But finally, he talked me into the Air Force, travel, go to school, and stuff like that. Um, didn't work out the way either of us wanted it to, obviously. Like I said, it was very early in my career that I started partying all the time, always in hotels drinking. Um, and once the mess started, it was out of control. Now, I had been in so much trouble while I was in DUIs and drunk, underage drinking and stuff that they were giving me an out. They were going to let me out. All I had to do was show up for a physical at 7 in the morning. I chose to go get high instead and never made it. Later in the day, I got a call from my mom, and all she said was, "Where the F are you?" And I said, I'm in Arizona. Where the F are you? And it was, okay, smartass, your commander's looking for you. You're AWOL.
Oh, wow.
Um, I was told that I had, I think, an hour to get back to the base before I would actually be charged with AWOL. So,
Well, they give you some time at least. That's good.
yeah, well, in full uniform, I ran as fast as I could, about 9 miles to get to the base. Um, did not make it in time. But I ended up sitting in the first sergeant's office waiting for him for several hours. Like, he really made me sweat it out. And when he came in, um, he called the commander. The commander came over. They sent me for a drug test. I failed that, kept on lying and lying, and all I wanted to do was go home. They gave me the option to go home. I thought I would still be going home. That turned into extra duty for 15 days while we waited for the results of the test. And every day I'd get done with extra duty, I'd go right back out and get high. So it got to the point
So it was
where,
a full on addiction at that point. It wasn't. It
horrible.
wasn't just like a party thing at that point.
No.
It was or escape.
It was every day, as often as I could. I went from, I don't know, 185 pounds down to like 120 very quick. Like, I got skin and bones, could barely move, I was in so much pain, my body hurt. But I kept on doing it because it's the only thing that made it go away. At one point, I was talking to my lawyer, military lawyer, because I kept failing drug tests and insisting that I wasn't on drugs, that it was a false positive, which no one was buying that. I thought they were, but and then I had like a seizure in my lawyer's office. He picked me up and carried me across to the hospital on the other side of the road. And when I woke up, my first sergeant was standing over me. He said, are you ready? Are you ready to get some help? I just started crying, like, take me to a rehab or whatever. Within the next couple hours, you had a bed for me in a rehab out there. But I had to go back to the girl's house that I'd been getting high with because all my clothes and stuff were there. And when I went in there, it got real ugly, real bad, because I had, she was high and thought it was a cop that I was bringing into her house. But I did 40 days in a rehab, 10-day detox, which they said is like outrageous for meth. But I was, at that point, I was up for like 3 weeks. My body would shut down and I'd black out for like an hour or something. But other than that, there was no sleeping. I always had a pipe in my mouth. Hurt a lot of good friends. Threw away a lot of opportunities. I got court-martialed because I couldn't stop. I got out. Day one, I had that girl's mom pick me up. Went over there and drank a bottle of brandy. Not long after, that girl had come home from a binge. She fell asleep, and I was left kind of alone, made some calls, and I had some stuff delivered to me, and it all started all over again. And the 50 pounds I put on in that 40 days in rehab all went away within a month. As my court-martial date got closer, my dad flew out to see me, to be there with me when I got court-martialed, which is, that's like the most heartbreaking thing in the world for me, is that my dad had to watch that. I only went in to make him proud, and I threw it all away for drugs, and
Shows you his love, though. He
Yeah.
wanted to be there for you.
yeah, it was, well, when my lawyer picked him up from the hospital, or from the airport, I'm sorry, he said, Mr. Ritten, we have bad news. Your son's gone again. He said, your son ran. My dad kept insisting he didn't go anywhere. He's still here. And he said, how can you say that? He said, because he knew I was coming. So he drove him back to my dorm room. I had been thrown out of my house on base and put in the dorms. And when they opened the door, I was under a pile of clothes on my bed, sleeping off another 2-week binge. Got got to spend the night with my dad that night. And the next day, I got put away for 10 months. Unfortunately, I had my wisdom teeth pulled and I broke a finger while I was in and was put on Percocet. The addiction started all over again. And when my pills ran out, I knew they weren't going to fill them again because I had BS'd my way into a couple other scripts already. I handed one of the other guys in confinement the biggest book I could find, put my hand on a door frame and told him to hit it. I said, break my hand again. And he did. And when I went back, the doctor told me your hand's worse than it was in the first place. Like it's obvious what you're doing. Didn't get away with it at that time. When I got out, I moved to Indiana. Backtrack a little bit. One of my affairs or flings or whatever, I had gotten a young woman pregnant. I don't want to say that wrong these days. But I had nothing to do with her. Like I blew off every appointment. I was the most irresponsible and ignorant person that you can imagine back then. But when I got out, we decided we were going to try. So we moved to Indiana to live with her dad. I couldn't find a job. I just smoked weed nonstop. Didn't do anything for my family. And then about a month and a half after we got there, I got a call from my dad. My stepdad had passed away. So I got a bus ticket home with zero intention of ever coming back. I was just leaving this poor girl and my daughter behind. I didn't even feel bad about it at that point. I just wanted to go home. But I got home, moved in with my mom, and I had altered my ID to make it look like I was older than I was. So the bar down the road, I knew everybody there from growing up in the area. Spent all my time down there.
So this is all before 21.
Yeah, I think I was 20 at that point. When I got out of jail and got home, I was 20.
Sounds like lifetimes of stuff
Yeah,
from just a
yeah.
short amount of time. It's nuts.
Yeah. In very quick fashion, the coke got out of hand. Always high again. Honestly, the only thing that kept me from going after meth when I got home was the price here. It wasn't as easily accessible, so I couldn't afford it. For coke, much more attainable, I guess you could say. Weed, coke, always at the bar, always fighting with somebody. And then I remember the military had all my stuff shipped home to my dad's while I was in confinement. And one weekend, I went over and took everything that had been shipped home and moved it to my mom's garage. One night I went out drinking, came home and decided to go through my boxes. And the first thing I pulled out was a white t-shirt that was completely caked with blood. Now, with as much as I was doing and how I'd hang with dealers, they could convince me to do anything for a bag. The problem is I wouldn't remember it because I had been up so long already that everything, I didn't know what was real anymore. It was the most nauseating thing in my life was to pull that shirt out of there because the only thing I knew was it wasn't my blood, but I had no idea whose it was. And it was in my stuff. So at this point, I'll never know what I may or may not have done to someone to get my shirt that covered, you know. It never really stopped. I kept on going and going. Never got a job because the military kept paying me, even though they weren't supposed to. There was some kind of mistake, and they kept sending me money. And I kept spending it on weed. I thought I would be a drug dealer instead. Turns out I'm not very good at it because I like to smoke everything I had instead. But got to the point where I would get into physical altercations with my mom and my younger sister, and no one wanted to be around me. Like, even I had good friends that I'd stay with occasionally, and we'd party, and I'd get out of control, and I'd end up attacking somebody, and or attacking him. About, we'll say, a year and a half after I got home, I had an apartment in Allentown, and my buddy, my best friend growing up, came over with another guy we grew up with, and I bought a bunch of cocaine from him. Later that night, I went to where they were hanging out, and I probably had a case of beer in me and quite a bit of cocaine. And a fight broke out between my buddy and one of the girls that they had over. She pushed him for something. I don't know if he was embarrassed or what, but tried to retaliate and threw her into a fence. So I jumped on one of the other guys to keep him off of him, just to kind of calm the situation down. And about 2 hours later, we were sitting on the trunk of his Corolla when a car drove by real slow at the end of the driveway. And within seconds, there were 5 guys walking towards us with their faces covered and their hands behind their back. And he kept saying, "Let's go inside, let's go inside." And I was like, "No, you don't run away when you're with me. We'll take care of this. Everything will be fine." They started questioning, who hit the girl or who pushed the girl. And my buddy told them that the guy was gone and he lived right up the street. He would go inside and get the information, more or less just going to leave me there, not knowing what these guys intended. And I stood up and just screamed, "It was me, bitch, do something." And next thing I knew, I got hit in the face with a baseball bat, right in the temple, split some teeth on this side, ripped my chin wide open, and I was like covered in blood. I heard him hit my buddy, and at that point, I knew I couldn't take another one like that. They were going to kill me if I didn't at least do something. So I got up, fought back the best I could, and when I was able to get away, I ran across the street to what turned out to be a kidney dialysis building, and I broke in to get away from him. Punched through the window, and it had those wires in it and stuff, which is why my hands look the way they do now. But I feel like that's probably the first time I can remember really crying out to God. I trapped myself in a bathroom in that building with my feet against the door and my hands against the wall. And the blood was shooting so far out of my veins that were cut that it was hitting the ceiling. And that's not something anybody ever wants to experience. Passed out from blood loss at one point. And when I woke up, everything was quiet. The ringing in my ears from getting hit was gone. And my tendons were cut in my right hand, so it was really hard to grip the doorknob to try to get out. I pulled myself to the other side of the room. I found a phone on the wall and somehow made my hands work to call 911. Told him somebody tried to kill me. Don't know where I am. I need someone to help me. They told me that someone was in the area and I would have to walk out with my hands up. And no matter how many times I told them I couldn't stand up, you have to walk out with your hands up. We don't know what you're coming out with, or, the officer, whatever. I remember I was on my knees trying to get the door open, and when I finally pushed through it, I fell on my face outside, and when I looked up, the third time in my life, someone had a gun pointed at my face. This time, it was a police officer. Ambulance ended up coming. They had to cut my clothes off. My shoes, they could pick up and pour the blood out of them. When I woke up in the hospital, I had detectives and cops all around, and no one was allowed to come anywhere near my room. It had been determined that this was gang related, possibly their way into the gang, and had a bunch of surgeries and stuff to fix my hands and stitches in my chin and stuff. But as soon as I got out, I went to stay with my mom while I recovered. Lost my job, obviously. I couldn't do anything anymore. I couldn't shower. I couldn't clean myself in the bathroom or anything. But with all the pills I got, right back at it. I was smoking weed the second I got there, lock myself in a room and just go to town. Go down to the bar down the road and get as drunk as I could, as fast as I could at that point. I didn't even want to be in public because they hadn't found the guys that did it. And I knew they knew who I was. But
And at that point, you didn't know who was it?
I had no idea. I knew that one of the guys who sent them back was the guy I tried to get off my best friend who was trying to break up the fight also. But from what I'm told after the fact, I don't remember much about the fight that started everything before those guys came. But I was told that I jumped on this guy and started wailing away. And that's why he was like, yeah, let's get him back here. So at that point, going through therapy and stuff, like this part will make sense further along, but I was told, I hope you don't plan on hitting anyone. You'll never make a full fist again. I said, okay, what about playing the guitar? And he said, that's out of the question. Your fingers aren't going to work that way anymore.
And just a side note from this, I'm excited for the later part of that.
Yeah. God had other plans.
It's amazing.
So I continued on that road for quite a while. My cousin moved in with me for a while, and it was the same thing. He was big into drugs. We were always doing coke, up all night all the time, drinking like crazy, involved with some really bad people. But moving on from there, I had a son very shortly after that with just, another one I was with. And pretty much from day one, I wasn't really a father. I would rather have been drinking and getting high and not having anything to do with it. I would make things up, like, I'm not going to be home this weekend. I can't take him. Like, really, I was just going to be down the road at the bar getting loaded. So I ended up extremely depressed. I was in a behavioral health unit several times. First one was because I couldn't stop drinking, and my son's mom was telling me that I couldn't see him.
I'm sorry, what's a behavioral health unit? I've never heard of that one before.
Let's call it the Nut House.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, Muhlenberg just has nicer names for it.
Okay.
But it was more or less, I wouldn't even call it a cry for help. It was just like, this will get me out of the heinous things that I'm doing. Like, people will ignore how much of an a-hole I am if they think I need real help. I was still playing the game, still trying to play the system, and hide how bad I really was without letting on that everything I was telling people about the depression and stuff it was as real as it gets. Like, I hated who I was. Now this was right around 2007. Yeah, that's when I was in the hospital the first time. As soon as I got out, I think I moved back in with the guy that I got jumped with, and things were wild all over again. Any drugs I could get, drinking all the time, out running into stuff with cars, like just annihilated, putting everybody's safety, way off to the side at that point. The coke really didn't stop until I want to say it was around 2008. I was still living with my mom, still going to the bar all the time. It's just things were harder to get. But I'd kind of gotten myself to the point where I was at least working. I was kind of a normal person. And then 2009, I was in a bar for my pool leagues, and I met the woman I'm married to now. Neither one of us expected it to be anything. Like, it was just, look who I met at a bar. Let's see what happens next. I think I thought it was more serious than she did. But we spent a lot of time together until I think it was April of 2009. I was at an ex-girlfriend's house getting drunk with her grandfather and her cousin and her uncle, I believe it was. And had way too much to drink, a lot of whiskey and stuff. She came home and tried to wake me up. And I just beat the hell out of everybody in the room in a complete blackout. When the police came, they put me in the car. They put the leather leg restraints on me, and I broke them, snapped them off with my legs, ripped myself wide open. But I was so drunk, nothing, I didn't feel anything at that point. They kept trying to put me back, in the middle of the car, so I'm kicking the windows and stuff. So I put my head through the window. And at that point, they weren't going to put me in jail. It's just, you got to go somewhere and sleep this off. Like, nobody wants to press charges. Don't know why. In the midst of all of that, I was already on the run for a DUI that I didn't go to court for. And they ended up putting me in jail for institutional vandalism because I put my head through the window. And they said I would get out Monday when the judge came. I think it was a Friday or a Saturday night. And when I had my teleconference with the judge, I asked, when am I getting out of here? Like, you got to get me out of here. And she's like, you have like 16 warrants. Like, you're not going anywhere. And I didn't know about a lot of them. I thought, they just disappear or something, Jump backwards about a year. No, 3 years. 2006, I was at a bar one night.
Is this for one of the Warrens? Is that
Yeah.
okay?
So I was at a bar in Bethlehem called Tally Ho, and I was doing karaoke, and my oldest son's mom got into a physical skirmish, we'll call it, because, I don't know what else it was, with another woman at the bar, and the bouncer grabbed me and said, you got to get her out of here. So I, bear hugged her and picked her up and carried her outside, and I was trying to hold her still, like, you got to stop, you're going to get arrested. And next thing I knew, someone put their hand on my shoulder and said, let her go. And I shook it off. I said, get the hell away from me. You don't know what's going on. Well, the next time the hand grabbed me, it was with a lot of force, like pinching my shoulder. And I threw an elbow back and split a police officer's mouth wide open.
Ooh.
And they beat damn near every ounce of life out of me, smashing my head on the concrete and stuff. And I went to court for that. And the judge told me she couldn't hear my case because she was the one that called the police. She heard the screams. She's a magistrate that worked directly across the street from the bar.
Wow.
Was working late. And so go to another judge for that. She told me, if you don't mind me saying, I've seen you several times, and I think you have a drinking problem. And me being who I was, said, well, if you don't mind me saying, I don't think that's any of your effing business. So there were a few extra charges. The punishment was much more severe because of that. But when I got put in jail in 2009, it was probably not more than a couple months in. Right before I went in, my dad told me that he found out he had lung cancer. the next day, he called me again. He's like, they made a mistake. I have COPD. I'm like, I'm furious at this point. Like, how could they make that mistake?
That is a very odd. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, 3 months into my sentence, I got a letter with the truth. He did, in fact, have lung cancer. Praise God, he's in remission. He has no problems with it now.
So, what, did he lie to you, or was it like there was a mix-up, or?
No, I think, probably reacted by my reaction at that point. Like, it destroyed me to find out he had cancer. It
So
broke
he
my
wanted to
heart.
protect you.
I think. I don't know. I don't know if we've ever really talked about that afterwards, other than joking around, like, oh, you lied to me, dude. But when I got out of there, I went to live with my grandmother and got back in touch with my wife now, and we started dating again. And all we did was drink, like always partying. Um, I would say 2012, things got kind of bad with us. I wasn't getting along with her family. I didn't appreciate the way I was being talked to, and I didn't feel like I had um, the support I wanted. So I moved out, got an apartment not far away, and party time all over again. Whatever I could get my hands on. This time it was like Oxycontin. If I could get Coke, it would be that. Ecstasy, just drunk all the time. Um, Found out when I moved out that she was pregnant with our son. And at that point, I was kind of like, well, not a good enough reason for us to be together. And within a couple months, I ended up moving back home anyway. We got back together, but my drinking was out of control. It's been that way. It just stayed that way. My wife actually pretty much stopped drinking after my son was born. Like, she had no desire anymore. But I would spend a whole lot of my time on my back porch or in my backyard, chain smoking cigarettes, smoking bowls, and just drinking a case of beer every day till I was fall down drunk. Like, literally couldn't get myself in the house. Uh, we were in really bad shape. Like, uh, when we were still working together, so probably like 3 or 4 years ago. It's probably 4 or 5 by now.
Well, without saying the company name or whatever, how long have you been there? I
A
forget now.
little over 5.
5. Okay.
December was 5 years.
Okay.
But I remember I would come home from work and
Very mad at me sometimes.
yeah, but not for anything you did. It was just my own insecurities or ignorance or a-holeness or whatever you want to call it.
Quirks. We'll call them quirks.
Yeah. But my son knew that all I wanted when I got home was to reach in the fridge and grab a beer. So it got to the point where my 2-year-old son would come running to the door with a beer in his hand. And I say it this way, but he probably didn't know. But in my mind, he knew that I wanted a beer more than I wanted to see my son when I walked in after work. And the second he'd hand me that beer, it would be off and running until I couldn't see straight. Now, through all that, I knew that I had a problem. But as you can attest to, I worked like no one you've ever seen. Like, I was always going. It didn't slow me down. It just made me a nasty person.
I think that's what kept you going, was you're constantly trying to work off.
Yeah, I was just drunk all the time.
Yeah, just trying to work it all off at all times, and his work was always good, but there was always
not so much.
But I could also tell. I never told you this before, but I could also tell that you were inside. You weren't happy.
No, I was miserable.
Yeah.
I hated myself. I hated my wife. I hated that I wasn't there for my son, my wife. I know my wife didn't like being around me. It got to the point where I could see how people looked at me, like where people would only talk to me if it was about drinking. No one really cared anything else. People at work were calling me whiskey because I'd come in after a half gallon the night before and just be smashed walking through the door. But
He always did have good stories, though. That's what a lot of people
Yeah.
in the department that we worked in, they always wanted to hear the dentist stories.
Yeah. Tell us a story.
A man named Brady.
Yeah. It got to the point where me and my wife were doing really bad for a while. Um, and I remember one night in particular, I was out on the back porch drinking my night away like always, and she was yelling at me about my drinking, and I said, "Just tell me you want a divorce. I know you do. I know you want a divorce." She said, "I don't want a divorce. I want you to stop drinking." And I said, "I'm not going to stop drinking." And she said, "Well, then I guess we need to get a divorce." Uh, I would say within a couple weeks, on the way home from work, I stopped and got 5 pregnancy tests because in my mind, it was her. She was the one with the attitude. Well, it turns out that she was in fact pregnant with our daughter who just turned 3 on Friday. Um, and I thought that was going to be it, like everything was going to be different. Um, and when it got close to the time for my daughter to be born, I really slowed it down because I knew she wouldn't be able to do anything in the middle of the night with the C-section. And so I calmed it down. And one day she said, "Boy, I could really drink a shock top." And I was like, "I'll be right back." So I ran out and got her a 6-pack and me probably a 30-pack. And I got right back to where I was. Um, right after, it was probably 3 years ago now, when I left the department with you guys. Now, I'm forever grateful for meeting you, and I don't know if we're using names. We'll change his name for this, but we'll call him Ben. But I used to love listening to you guys talk about your faith, and you were always real knowledgeable about the Bible, and it made me feel good to sit and listen to it because I had no knowledge. I grew up, my grandma always took me to her church for Sunday school. Occasionally I'd go with her when I was an adult, and it was always like the most touching thing in the world. Like she must have told her pastor everything about me because everything he said, it was like burning through me.
Or it could have just been God, trying to work with you.
Now I know.
He was kind of like throwing up like the, hey,
Yeah.
this is a
Over
caution
here,
sign.
you're going the wrong way. But I remember telling you guys if I ever get off of weekends, if I ever get day shift, I'm going to start going back to church. I don't know that I believed it, but I had heard about a place in Quakertown, Morning Star Fellowship. And a lot of people told me it was a good place to go. So within 2 weeks of getting on day shift, when I left our department, I went for the first time. And I sat by myself. It was like super awkward because I was like way in the back in the corner. And some random guy walked over to me and asked if he could sit with me. So he did, and we talked a little bit here and there through the service. And afterwards, he asked me, "Is everything okay with your family?" I don't know what this guy's talking about. He said, I feel like your mom, like, is she okay? Is she going through like an injury or something?" And she had just hurt her hand at Amazon and was like out of work on workman's comp and stuff. It blew my mind. Like I was like, I probably know this guy. Like, maybe that's it. He ended up being someone I could always talk to, like real supportive of me in like every way. So there's some of the crap side of things in my life. Now, when things started changing, I mean, obviously it started changing when I started going to the church, but
I actually remember when you told me that story about the guy that you
Yeah.
were talking with, because I remember you came to her like, you had this befuddled look like, what is going on here?
Yeah.
And in the meantime, I'm like, God's talking to you.
Yeah, I'd
and
never-
you were just like very weirded out by it. You were
It did.
it weirded you out.
it didn't sit right, because it wasn't possible in my head, I guess. Like I said, I went to church as a kid. I have very basic knowledge. I know what Christ did for us. I know who God is, I guess. But I never had a relationship with him. And I think it was December 31st of, actually no, let's hold off on that. So
Save that nugget for later.
yeah, it was right before my birthday in I think it was 2017. My mom asked me, "What do you want for your birthday?" And I had been going to Morningstar for a couple months at that point, and I was loving every minute of it. And I told her, "All I want you to do is stay at my house Saturday night and come to church with me Sunday." For weeks, she always had stuff to do, like, "Oh, I don't know, I have to do this and I have to do that." And I said, "No, you don't have to. You're just choosing to. Like, you're making excuses. You need this just as much as I did. Let's go." Finally, she did it for my birthday, and hasn't missed a week since. That December 31st on New Year's Eve, we were baptized together. Problem was, I left there and went home and got drunk. Like, really nothing was different other than the fact that I was reading the Bible, like, and I was going to church.
Son was different. God was that seed was growing.
Yeah, but you know what I mean? I wasn't changing really anything. And then
That reminds me of something, actually. That there's a minister that came to the one Morning Star that I went to before, and he told a story about him and his girlfriend before they got married. That they would be sitting in the kitchen. This is how he described it. They would be sitting there drinking in the morning, naked, as they were both not, just sitting there, and they're living together but not married, and they just read the Bible and talk about it. Because they're just interested in it. So they weren't changing anything at that point.
Right.
But there was something working, and that's just reminded me of what you're saying.
right, it never returns empty. But it was January, I'm going to say 26th of 2019. I went to the men's breakfast at the church, and it was like, for me, it was awkward because I hadn't put myself out there to meet new people. Instead, it was just the random people that would talk to me while I was there on a Sunday. But, sorry again, let's go backwards. I remember sending you an email I got from the church saying they were looking for an electric guitarist. And you were like, "You got to do it. Go do it." I said, "No, I don't have an electric guitar, and I don't play electric guitar. I'm a rhythm guy." And I said, "But if that email ever comes through that they need an acoustic guitarist, I'll do it."
Was this before or after we were talking more at that point?
I think I was already out of our department.
I remember there was like a little bit of a sabbatical where we weren't talking too much, and then it like slowly grew.
Yeah.
I just don't remember what point in time that one was.
I don't really know. It had to be when we were talking more because I was sending you the emails.
Yeah, that's a true statement. Yeah.
But the guy was amazing, awesome. He's an evangelist named Jesse Comrie, and he was really good at the men's breakfast. But like I said, it was kind of awkward because I was sitting at a table with a bunch of guys I didn't know, and then the next day, oh, by the way, I was on the worship team also. I made that. That's the part about the guitar and I got it other plans.
Since he's going to downplay it, I'm going to upplay this. Okay, so you're talking about a guy who told he can't move his hands. Out here, I want you to move your hands real quick. Like
they work.
This guy is told he can't move his hands, and now he's not only moving his hands, he is moving them to play music, which God loves to use because music speaks to people's hearts with or even without words. So God is using that. And that was something he was told he was never going to be able to do.
Yeah.
So God said, wherever you think you're happening in your life, wait on God because you might be very surprised.
Well, ironically enough, when they told me I wouldn't play again, and I couldn't move my fingers or anything at that. These I could move, but they were cut here. But I like grinded something into my plastic cast they had on me, and I stuck a pick in there. And I would slowly start playing again with like a totally stiff hand on this side, but I wasn't willing to not play again. The guitar, I would say, ultimately saved my hands. Like that's why I can do this because I refused to,
So therapy for your hands, essentially.
The stuff they'd have me do when I went to therapy was just pointless. Like do this 10 times. I could have did that at home watching SpongeBob. Like I didn't need to come here for that. But
$33.50. Okay.
Yeah.
There you go.
So. And also, a little before that, when my daughter was born, there was this song called Stir a Passion. And beautiful song. And and I used to dance with her every night to put her to sleep. And I would sing this song in her ear. It was probably the first worship song that I just couldn't get enough. Like I needed more like that. It was like old school worship, like real heartfelt and passionate, and that's what I'm drawn to, like that kind of worship. But when I went to audition, I didn't know what to do. Like in my head, I was like, "Well, I'm just gonna play I Can Only Imagine and sing that." And the worship leader was like, "Well, what song do you like that we do? What do you want to?" I told him, I said, "I sing Stir a Passion to my daughter every night." He's like, "Well, let's do that." So I played. I don't know. Within a couple weeks, I got an email telling me that they wanted me to be a part of the team, and it was crazy. Like I've always wanted to be a musician. Like I always knew that I could sing. I was developing my skills as a guitarist, but I always sang for attention. Like karaoke or like I'm drunk. Let's play the guitar around a campfire, and everybody loved it. Like I was that guy. And then I started practice with them, but they wouldn't mic me or anything because I was so nervous. Like, get me used to playing with the team, and then we'll figure it out from there. Well, the day after the men's breakfast, Jesse Comrie preached the service Sunday morning. And I don't know what it was, but like the whole time I felt something inside, like it's time to change things. Like he has this spoken word on YouTube. It's called I Thirst. Highly recommend you check it out. Um, After the service was over, I called my wife on the way home and I said, "I'm stopping at a 12 pack." And she said, "Why are you getting 12? You know you're going to want more. Get a case." And through the tears that she couldn't see, I said, I can't do this anymore. Like, I absolutely hate myself. I don't want to drink like this. Like, I'm always drunk. I don't do anything for anybody but me. I'm always drunk. Now, on top of that, I knew there were 9 beers in the fridge at home, so a 12 was going to get me through the day anyway. But I went
That's some
home.
alcoholic math right there.
Yeah, yeah. Yep, 12 plus 9 is... Um, but I got home, started drinking. I spent the entire day on my back porch listening to that spoken word over and over and over again and crying like a baby, like blubbering, foolish idiot. And the end of the night, I walked into my fridge and I reached in for the last beer and I told myself, "This is it. This is your last drink." And I don't know how to explain it other than God whispering in my ear as clear as day, "You just had your last drink." And that was it. Like, I didn't drink it. I left it there and I went to bed. A couple days later, it was a Thursday night. I went to rehearsal with the worship team. And
So you didn't drink in between that and that?
no, I was 4 days at that point when I got to rehearsal with no alcohol.
Just for
And,
reference, beforehand, it was a daily affair,
Oh, it
even
was-
even through the church and worship
Yeah,
team and all that.
It was at least 20 beers or a half gallon of whiskey a day. Sometimes a 12 pack and a pint or something, but it was very regular. So I went in one night and the worship leader, he's like, "Is everything all right?" And I was crying a little bit. And I said, "No." I said, "I want to talk to you, but I think maybe, I don't know how." And I told him a little bit about it. And he said, "What's up to you if you want to share it with the team?" So we got up and we were getting ready to pray. And I said, "I've always wondered if you guys would still want me here, if you really knew who I was and what I was about." So I told him, I said, "When I leave practice, I don't get home till 9:30. I'll still sit outside and drink 15 beers before I have to get up at 4 in the morning for work. I'm hammered. Every second I'm at home, I spend all my time drinking. I don't know what to do." And every one of them put their hands on me and prayed and cried with me. And I've, like, very few times have I thought, I could probably use a beer. It got so easy. Like, I'm telling you, if you got a problem, get it out there. Don't keep it inside. Like, you have to share it with people that care. Once it's out in the light, it can't go back into the darkness. You can't, it was an incredible feeling because I've never had friends like that. Like, my friends wanted me to keep on going. Just keep getting loaded. Like, you got the money. You're paying for this. Let's get high. Let's do this. These people legitimately cared about me and they didn't know me. Like, I'd only been playing with them for like a month. I've never experienced that in my life. So as through all that, and in the first couple months of being sober, I found out that my dad, who was like my biggest drinking buddy, we could destroy 2 cases of beer in a day, no problem, decided to stop drinking. Um, it's incredible. Now, instead of when we go to the cabin getting loaded and just whatever we did, it's turned into, like talking. We have like a regular relationship, to get loaded, to have fun together. We were always real close anyway, but that was our thing.
You didn't need any grease on the wheels. It just was natural.
Yeah. My dad reads the Bible now. He's sending me things from Amazon, like devotionals. My dad always, with what he went through in Vietnam, he always used to tell us there's no room in heaven for people like me. And like when I first started going to church, I was like running to Christ, telling people what they were doing wrong. And I was like real self-righteous about it. Like, I already won. I already know everything. And it took a couple different people, believe you were one of them, like, watch how quick you're doing this. Like, your walk is very, very new. Like, you know, but it turned into, when I started singing, the people always came up like, that's incredible. Like, I had no idea you could sing like that. And in the beginning, it was all about me. I was like, yeah, my head was this big. I don't know how I held it up on the stage.
I think it was all the hot air that kind of just floated.
Yeah, that's probably it. But now,
I want to say something too. When I hear you sing, and I've told you many times how proud I am of you, but I've noticed something. I don't think, it's gonna sound like weird, but I don't think it's necessarily how you're singing. You have this passion in you, and this, like, you can hear the gratefulness, the pain, all that, like, wrapped in there. There's soul, if you whatever you want to call it. It's
no,
there.
I totally understand.
And that is, I think that's the thing that draws people, because people, whether or not you are the best or the worst singer, which is nothing saying against your singing, you're great at that. I think it's just the passion behind it that's what captures when people hear that.
See, and like I said, it's all I ever wanted was to play music for people, and God chose to put me on His stage to sing for Him. But like I said, I took all the glory for a long time because I was getting so much attention from people, and now over the last year and December was a year. The son who I had given up on early in his life, I hadn't been anywhere around him until he was 10. Things were going pretty bad for him at home with his mom. So he moved in with me. So I went from like this crap father who nothing to do with his kid. Now he lives with me. He went from all F's to he has all A's and B's. He was miserable. He was in therapy. He was on medication. Everything that a kid shouldn't be going through, he was going through, and it's all gone.
Praise God.
Praise God indeed. I remember one time in particular, I was on a platform, we were worshiping, and they did an altar call, and I wasn't paying attention to anybody around. I was eyes up, playing my guitar, just worshiping, and when I looked down, my son was on his knees with his hands folded, looking up at me, and it was like one of the best feelings I've ever had. Like, all he ever saw of me was when I was, willing to let him come over while I drank, was more or less the relationship we had. And something started, stirring inside of me. Like, I have a lot of people watching me. Like, people see me now. I need to watch what I do, and I need to change some things. And I think it was the first time my wife came to church to watch me sing. And I say it because that's what it was. At that point, she just wanted to watch me sing. And she took a video of it. And I remember the day I stopped singing for the congregation and started singing for God. Because the video, she turned it to my daughter, and then turned it to my youngest son, and the look on their faces, like they were so enthralled with what I was doing, like I was this amazing thing they were watching, and it just completely changed my heart for worship. Like, I have a responsibility to lead my children to Christ the way I wasn't raised. Like, my grandmother took me. It wasn't my parents that took me to church. My grandma took me when she could. I have obviously a lot of problems. I'm very angry. That's like my biggest thing is I overreact to too many things. Probably insecurities. Like, I'm not where I thought I'd be by now. I thought I'd have some cool house and like a roller coaster in my yard or something. But
A roller
yeah,
coaster.
you know,
That's a
things
completely normal expectation
things
of
just
life.
don't happen that way for some people, unfortunately. But I mean, my walk has been very difficult for a very long time. But I mean, just the decision to go to church was hard. And everything after that got so easy. Like, I have my bad days. You know, I'm tempted in different ways to do different things, but I have a way out. Like, God always provides that option. Like,
The way of escape.
where before it was like, I'm just staring at that. Like, I'm going to go for this anyway, so it doesn't really matter what anybody has to say. You know, I've learned control, and I've learned to discern between what I want to do and what I'm being pushed towards. You know, I don't do things because I think they'd be, oh, maybe I'll do it. You know, if something is really burning on my heart, like, I need to do this, I take that as that's the spirit. Like, go, just go now. Don't, you know, run toward what I'm being pushed to. I spent a lot of time afraid to talk about my faith, probably because of the way I was with you. You know, like, I just made fun of you all the time. I belittled you in every way I could. And the worst part about it now is like you're one of the best people I know. Like, your heart is massive, and you always forgave me. Like, I would have punched me. Like, I don't know why you didn't. But
So, for reference for this, so I'm blowing up your spot a little bit on this one part, but I'm never gonna forget this moment. Anyone who in my life who I consider a friend, you know it because I take it very seriously. And I remember, now I'm getting emotional. I remember the moment you came up to me in work's lunchroom and you just sat down and you talked to me. And I've had this experience before with someone else in my life where there's issues that happen and then everything just went let go at the same time. Now, beforehand, I didn't have anything against you at that point. I didn't think anything because there was just, okay, whatever. There was nothing more to it. But when you came to, my heart just broke for you at that point, and you talked to me, and I saw that, and then something in my heart just said, okay, God's like, this guy right here, don't worry, he's one of the good ones. And then ever since then, like, our friendship has grown very much so, and I'm very thankful for it. And it's just, I where God put you, where God put me, it works out, and I'm very thankful for it. So that one moment, I will never forget that moment. I just wanted to let you know that.
right on. It's there's a lot of little things along the way, like when I would feel like giving up or when I get all frustrated. Like, when I left the department and I first started going to church, I was still really angry, walking around with my fists tight and head down. And a guy who I got to be very close with was also fairly new in his walk with Christ, but a lot of similarities in our backstories. You know what I'm talking about. But one day I was just absolutely losing my mind in like an angry fit or whatever. And one of the best lessons I've ever learned, he told me to turn around and he pushed down on my shoulders and he said, take a couple steps forward. And I was mad because I didn't know why he was doing it. It was just irritating me at that point, but I did it. He pushed harder and he said, do it again. And he said, you think you can walk like that for a while? I said, yeah, probably. And he said, I'm going to try one more time. And he put all of his weight on me, like jumped in the air and forced me to the ground. And as mad as I was that it happened, when I picked my head up, he had his hand stretched out to help me up and was like tears pouring out of his eyes. And he said, "Stop trying to carry all the weight that Christ already carried for you." And it was like everything was lifted. I carry way too much. I stress myself out in ways that I don't need to. My kid does bad in school. I'm like losing my mind, like I failed, and you know, like I look bad or something. I don't know exactly what it is, but I'm crazy hard on myself when someone who I should be able to help fails, you know, and I get out of hand sometimes with the things I say. Like, I don't do it to belittle anyone or to bash anyone or to put them down. I can't stand bullying. When my kids go at it or one of them says something about the other one, I lose my mind.
I fully understand that. It's. I think a lot of that one for just people in general is when you see an injustice done, you feel attacked because you're knowing what's been done to you, and therefore you can't stand. You don't want anyone else to go through that. I understand that because I've seen. That's me. I right with you. That it's that anger, and it can get explosive because you hate it.
Yeah,
I get it.
I had never been, mistreated or talked down to because of anything really. I was, well liked and popular in school and stuff. Like I was never like cast aside as the nerd, if you will. But
That was a slight at me. I'm
yeah,
just saying, I
that's
know
what I look
that.
that way, like nerd. But I went in to one of the offices at work to ask for some help with an issue that is way above my pay grade. And one of the men in there found out that I was singing with the church. And it was someone who I used to, maybe not be friends. We weren't friends, but we got along well enough that we would stand around and talk for a while and stuff, whatever. When he found out, it was, "Oh, it's so gay, man. It's so gay. Like, you're such a..." And him and two other guys in the office started, like, berating me with all these, like, so-called facts about how Christ never died on a cross because the Romans have perfect records, and there's no record of this and that. And the way they were coming at me, I was getting so pissed off. Like, in any other situation, I would have just started tearing people apart. And I walked out of that office crying like a baby. And I got into the yard jockey truck with the group leader in my area, who happens to be a Jehovah's Witness. And when he asked me, "Why are you crying? Like, you're going to be treated this way as a Christian. You're told about this." And I said, "I think my problem is I didn't know what to say. I couldn't defend myself. Like, it was too new to me. I didn't read as much as I should, other than like the Bible app, the little plans and stuff. Like, I didn't dig deep. I didn't try to like learn anything, and I couldn't defend myself. And from then on, it was like constantly in the Bible. Everywhere I was on my phone, reading more and reading more. Like, I'll never let that happen again." And that same guy, through all that, the fact that I turned to him, a couple days later, I went to work and I sat down with him and I said, "Look, man, I owe you an apology. I don't treat you very well. I said, I'm angry. I don't like a lot of things, but it's not your fault. Like, I pray that you would forgive me." And he said, "As a Jehovah's Witness, I have doors slammed in my face and people cursing at me every day of my life. And it absolutely broke my heart because I have probably done that. Like, when people knock on my door when I don't want them there, like, I could have, at that point, would have been saying some pretty wild things too." Now, there are a lot of things that I will say I choose not to share because they don't make me or specific people in my life look very good. But more than anything, there's so much hate and division right now. Not like it hasn't always been there, but even the phone in the hand just blocking everything that's behind it is a total blur to any of us anymore. We've all fallen away from what's important. We were talking about these shoes earlier. Like, it is what it is. You know, that people are going to do things that don't make you happy. You don't have to hate people. Through the election, I watched families cursing and belittling each other on Facebook in front of people, people who I leaned on as like the strongest people I knew, the people that I leaned on for my encouragement in my hardest times. The things they were posting, like, you know, he's losing his mind, or haha, that guy's an idiot. Like, these are human beings. Like, we're not here for that. I want to see people love like Christ did. I want to see people accept, and you know, you don't have to agree with the things I do. Maybe I don't agree with the things you do, but there is way too much hate already without us doing it to each other, like families crumbling because of an election. You know, no matter how important you think it is, it's not as important as someone who's been there for your whole life, and because they voted different than you, or, you know, skin color issues and stuff. Like, it's all just got to stop. I can't take the negativity anymore. And I get so pissed off, and I like to call it righteous anger because I feel like my heart breaks for what breaks God's. But I know a lot of it is not, it's not righteous anger, like, because the things that go through my head on how I would solve the problem aren't very righteous things to do. But if there's one thing that I've learned through all of this is no matter what you're chasing, unless it's Christ, it's not worth it. Everything that I have now is because I surrendered. Everything that I don't have anymore is because I surrendered. The pain that's gone, nothing else would have took that away. It never went away when with drugs. It never went away with alcohol. It never went away with women. I was a liar and a cheater and a thief and, you know, every bad name you could call me. But God uses me now for good because there's something, I'm still here for something, like whether it's through music ministry or it's, you know, I learned something that I could pass on to someone, or even this today. If one person gets anything out of this, that's all I care about. And all the glory always has to go to God. I don't want any of it. I have way more than I need. I'm blessed with more things than I ever thought I'd have. A better paying job and better family life than I deserve. Like, if we want to be honest, we all deserve to go to hell. Like, we don't deserve anything good in our life for what we've done in the past. But the love and the grace and the mercy of God is so much stronger than anything you've been through before. And again, if there's one thing you take, anything you take out of this, just give it to God. Like, everything you have, just give it to Him. It'll never be better than when you finally let everything go and put it in His hands.
So this guy was very nervous, and I must say, for someone who's so nervous, you're doing pretty good. And God has a plan, and I definitely think that you're going to be talking more, because you got your speech down. I think it's going to be
sea legs.
There you go, you got it. So that story, that everything that my friend has been through, there's a reason. And that reason, sometimes we don't see it until later. Now, same way Joseph, he went through a lot of stuff, and where did he wind up? God always has a plan. Sometimes we like to throw as many lefts, rights into that plan as possible when He's telling us to go straight. If you're willing and you're open, He's going to do amazing things. And it's not going to be you. It's always going to be Him. So, yeah. Thank you very much, Dennis, for being on today. And
Thanks for inviting me.
Don't forget to check us out on www.whosoevergroup.com. Check us out on Facebook, facebook.com/whosoevergroup, and Twitter @whosoevergroup. And I'm sure we'll be seeing more of him. I just got to keep convincing him. All right. Talk to you guys later. Bye.